Carol Chapel, and I want to take you on a tour of a retrospective show that I have up right now. A few themes seem to reoccur as I was putting this show together. One of them was portraits. I've always enjoyed portraits. So since there are some right here, let's look at them. This one over here, I did in 1962 when I was sharing a studio with a group of other artists in Wichita. The studio was called Bottega, and this is a portrait of Jim Davis. He was one of the painters that was there. And as we come on around, these two paintings are of in an ancestor series that I did. The woman on the left is my paternal grandmother, and the man on the right is my maternal grandfather. I knew the grandmother, I didn't really know the grandfather. Now the next portrait is of Abby Hoffman, and this brings me to another series or another, we'll call it a series, that resonated over the period of time that I've been painting, and that is to take things out of a newspaper and do a painting about that. And this was the Chicago 7 trial, and that was painted in 1970. The other current event painting, and this is most recent, was done in 2008, and it's called Recapturing My Flag. And I don't think you can see it too well here, but around the edges, I have the first stanza of the Star Spangled Banner lettered. Another theme that seemed to resonate with me over the years was the kitchen. I think that women's roles in our culture have been pretty marginalized in the art world, and it's something I'm familiar with. Cooking. I think cooking is really creative. I like to cook, I like to bake. I can't think of anything that's much more creative than taking a vegetable and cutting it up and adding other vegetables and making some new creation and then sharing it with your friends or family. And that's interactive art. So a lot of these paintings that are around me right here have to do with the kitchen. This one is called Meditation on Rhubarb Pie. It was a real pie that I really baked. This apron that's in the case here, I painted as a memorial for a friend of mine who gave me a wonderful biscotti recipe, and the recipe is lettered around on the apron. This painting is of my mixer, and it's called The Egg. It was done in 2005. The one next to it was done around 1968, and it's called What I Do Mostly Is the Dishes. This triptych was done it's dated 1965. I was living in Little Tonga Canyon above Los Angeles, and I found this triangular piece out in the yard. It had been there for years. It's a piece of tin or some kind of metal. I don't know what its function had ever been, but I did the collage on that to be the top of this triptych of Adam and Eve. So this next painting goes on with this kind of religious theme, a Madonna and Child. This was done in '07. There seemed to be lots of babies being born. I just noticed a lot of my young friends were having children, and I did a series of baby and mother and child paintings at that time, but I had also done them in the 60s, 1960s. And this is just pretty typical. A mother trying to protect her child even though the child only really wants to do something with daylilies. The daylilies are a real flower that was in our garden at that time. And that brings me to gardening. Another endeavor that I think is wonderfully creative and that I enjoy a lot. This painting was done in 1975, and it's one of my annual spring paintings. My birthday is in the spring, and I try each year to do some piece of artwork right around the spring equinox. Or is it solstice? Springtime. Hollyhocks, it's all pretty self-explanatory. These are just plants, these are flowers that are in our garden. The dragonfly was on our pond. They're just a wonderful little creature, the dragonfly. When I was in college, I was a painting major and a printmaking minor, and I've always just loved printmaking. So these are examples of woodcuts that I've done. This one in the center I did in 1960 when I was living in Venice, California. The ones around it mostly were done last year, 2009. The top one is a trillium that was growing in our garden. The one beneath it is one of a series of 3 that I did called Maury's orchids. And they were orchids grown by a friend of mine named Maury. The top one over here is our dog named Dot, and she's standing on the edge of our pond, and it's called Dot Reflecting. Beneath it is another in the series of the Maury's orchids.